So it's my pleasure to welcome Adrian Bollard to the show. Adrian is going to be talking about his road to spirituality. He's traversed multiple continents, multiple countries, multiple industries. He's an accomplished real estate developer, even though he likes to, be humble about it. He recently published a book called Temple of Miryam, A Love the World Forgot. He is going to share about his business career. He holds an MBA. It's my pleasure to call him a business acquaintance of mine. We actually met through the solar industry in Alberta, and he's a mentor of mine. He shared quite a bit about energy efficiency to do with solar, to do with heat pumps, to do with net zero homes. He is a proud environmentalist. He wants to help the world get to that new future that we're getting to. Welcome, Adrian.
Hey Dijon, nice to be here. So happy to have your invite. So
Absolutely. I'm so happy to have you. And yeah, I apologize. I didn't mention this before. The easiest way to remember my first name, it's not your day off, it's your day on. The J is pronounced like a Y.
okay, day on. Sorry,
Yeah,
apologies.
no problem. No
Hey.
problem. So, welcome. So, I'd like you to kick us off with your background. You can start as early as you'd like to and just kind of help us understand your life story, your business story, your sort of backstory to, what helped you get to where you are today.
Um, I grew up in Ireland, so I was born in Drogheda, just north between Dublin and Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
That was back in 1974. Significant childhood event was when I was 8. I had two brothers killed in a traffic accident by a drunk driver, and that
Oh,
was kind of
my.
put my life probably on a more philosophical trajectory from then on in terms of like having a traumatic event like that at a young age and seeing how that affects your parents and stuff. And so I think I've always been quite a deep thinker from like a very early stage. Um, and yeah, when I went to college, I studied logistics, business studies, and transport. I then worked in logistics for a couple of years. Then I got a job at the Canadian Embassy where I was their logistics and property manager. I spent 10 years at the Canadian Embassy in Dublin,
Yes.
working as a locally engaged staff. During that time, I did my MBA in property management or facilities management. Um, from there, I had a relationship that went south, and I kind of got very unsettled when that relationship broke up. And I always wanted to go volunteer and work in Africa. And at that stage, I thought, okay, my friends had gone. We'd done a trip to Machu Picchu in Peru,
Yes.
and we went to Brazil and Argentina, and I realized, oh, I got a travel bug. I was a month traveling at that point in time, and I thought, and Peru and stuff is very much a developing country, and I thought, oh, and I thought I might have found that intimidating, or I'd never traveled outside of Western Europe or North America up until that point, and then I realized I'd always wanted to go to Africa, but didn't think I could was up for it. And then after that trip to South America, I thought, oh, I could travel to Africa quite easily. And through some very strange synchronicities, I got invited to go work for an NGO in Kenya. I took 6 months off to get there. So I told them I'd arrive in June, and I traveled around the world for 6 months to get there. And I've been to something like 70 or maybe even 80 countries at this point in time.
Yeah.
And I have subsequently gone around the world again.
Bravo.
And so I spent 6 months working in Kenya. Then that didn't quite work out with the organization I was with. And I'd already wanted to spend at least a year in Africa. So another Irish NGO had offered me a position in Sudan. So then I spent the next year working out of Sudan, north and south of north. It's one country at that point in time. Um, but now part of it where I was is now North Sudan, and part of it is now South Sudan. Um,
Yeah.
And when I came back to Ireland after that, I was kind of footloose and fancy free. And I thought, oh, if I'm ever going to make a move to Canada, and I had two sisters in Toronto, so I'd always been kind of coming back and forth from Canada. And that point in time, I thought, oh, now is the perfect time. I didn't have a mortgage or a girlfriend or a job to hold me back in Ireland when I got back. And I was still young enough to get one of those 2-year work holiday visas. So I grabbed that, moved to Canada, moved to Calgary, worked in Banff on a ski hill that first winter. It was 2008 when the financial crisis happened that summer with the banks in New York collapsing and stuff. And I thought I'd get a good solid job in a Calgary skyscraper as a property manager or something. But I say the universe had slightly different plans. So I ended up getting a job on a ski hill in Banff. But I got to learn how to ski. I had lots of fun with people from Australia and Europe and all over North America. That was having a fun winter. And from there, I got an employer to sponsor me to stay doing some property management. So my visa then extended into a sponsorship visa for Alberta. And then
Okay.
6 or 7 years later, I got the citizenship to stay. So,
And how long were you with that employer? Like you were saying, 6 or 7 years probably with that same employer, or
um, yes, I think that the visa restricted me to work just with that employer.
yeah.
So maybe, um, good question. Maybe it was 3 or 4 years, and then at that point in time, maybe the next set of visas that were kicking in.
Or you
Um,
were getting your permanent residency probably at some point. Once you got
exactly.
that,
Yeah. Yeah.
then you have the latitude to get your citizenship whenever you want.
Exactly. Yeah. So I've since got my citizenship a few years back. And yeah, so I forgot about the permanent residence would have been the stepping stone. And
Yep.
then once you have that, you're free to work for
Yes.
whatever employer from there. So
Wow. Over 70 or 80 countries twice around the world.
yeah.
You've definitely um how do I put it? Like I don't really want to use the term you've got me beat, but that's the best term I come up with. I visited about 30 to 35 countries,
Oh
lived on
wow.
3 different continents, but you've got that. You've
Yeah.
superseded that.
Yeah. I almost made it to Antarctica. Actually, I was in
Wow.
Foz do Iguaçu, not Foz do Iguaçu, El Fin de Mundo, they call it in the southern tip of Argentina.
Yes.
And there was a berth on a ship that was leaving like a week later, and they were selling it off for a couple $100. Like it would have cost thousands to buy it like in advance, but it was an unsold berth, and I could have I wanted to just take it, but it would have messed up my connecting flights to go to Brazil and move my way back up into North America. I
Yep.
was meeting a friend in Los Angeles. So it would have dug into my time in Brazil a lot, but
Yep.
looking back now, I should have just taken the opportunity, and I think that would have brought me to 6 continents if I had got to Antarctica on that trip.
Yep.
And back then, this would have been 2006, so it was before like very few people had been to Antarctica. I think now
Oh yeah.
cruises to Antarctica are more common, but
Yeah.
back then it would have been a pretty unique experience for sure.
Wow. So I wanted to ask you about the strange set of synchronicities for you to end up in Africa, if you don't mind sharing a little bit about that. And then maybe later we can come back to the tragic event when you were 8 years old. I also want to share that when I was, let's see here, I was, I want to say 22 years old, and I lost my brother at the age of 22. So it's definitely surreal. You know, it makes you kind of have a whole new outlook on life. Yeah,
Sure. Sorry to hear about your brother for sure.
yeah, same here.
Um, yeah, synchronicity. Like this story might sound unbelievable, but I can only tell you how it was, and then you can try and make sense of it, but it's not going to fit a logical world of experience. At the time, I mentioned I was working at the Canadian Embassy in Dublin,
Yeah, for about
and
10 years. Yeah.
yeah, and during that time, I'd watched. I was the pre night before I went to work one day. I'd watched this documentary on RTE, which is the Irish CBC, and
Okay.
it was about a an Irish doctor who had set up this NGO in Kenya, and I was moved to tears during it, and I said, "Oh my God, what? how meaningful is that to be doing all those things? And the documentary subsequently went on to win some international awards and stuff. It was genuinely a very, very touching documentary. But the next morning I was at work with my colleague and we're making a coffee or whatever. And she was telling me about this documentary that we'd both seen, and we were both saying, "Oh my God, it was just like heart-wrenching seeing what they were doing."
Yeah.
And at lunchtime, the embassy was on St. Stephen's Green in Dublin, and that's like kind of the main upper kind of business location in Dublin. And Grafton Street is kind of the Stevens Mall, which is just off that green. So
Yeah.
I was going to the bank to get a draft for that charity at lunchtime, and I went in, got the draft, I walked out, and Grafton Street, it's just if you can picture Stevens Mall at lunchtime, it's just like a swarm of people going back and forth.
Yeah.
And I'm walking up Grafton Street, and who do I walk right past? Only the doctor from the documentary. And but
Wow.
I didn't quite recognize him at the time, like he was out of context. I associated him as living in Kenya, and I guess he was in Ireland for the airing of the documentary, but um, I kept walking, and my brain is trying to say, where do I know that guy? I know him from somewhere. And then I realized, oh my
Yeah.
God, it's the guy from the documentary. So
Yeah.
I ran back, hoping I'd catch him, and I could literally just hand him the draft. It was in my breast pocket of my suit. And I went down to the bottom of Grafton Street. I hadn't caught him at that stage, and that's why the street kind of splits into four different directions. And he could have gone either direction.
Yeah.
So I gave up trying to chase after him, and I thought, wow, what was the odds of pretty much bumping into the guy that lives in Africa, and here I am with a check in my pocket for him, and I bump into him. So go back to the
Wow.
office, and I meet my colleague, and I tell her the synchronicity about I almost bumped into the guy after getting the draft from the bank. And so we got a giggle out at that synchronicity. And then a couple of days later, I'm out with another colleague having lunch in a restaurant just off Grafton Street, just a block away.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting opposite my colleague, and who's sitting at the table just across from us with a group of people is the same doctor. And I said,
Wow.
"Oh my God, what's the odds of this?" At that stage, I'd
Wow.
already mailed the draft to his organization, but I
Yeah.
just went over and shook his hands and said, "Well done." I said, like, it was a very, I seen the documentary. I told him about the synchronicity where I pretty much walked into him walking out of the bank.
Yeah.
And he asked me if I would consider volunteering to help them out in Kenya. I made some excuses and said, "Oh, I'm not sure if I'm up for that," and but just kind of left it at that.
Yeah.
And then I mentioned then I had been to South America with my friends, and that there's another synchronicity. Like my life is all about synchronicities, and they're often
Yeah.
million to one by million to one by million to one. And I'm very
Wow.
much a maths person and quantitative
Yeah.
techniques and stats and stuff. And when I see these really strange million to one synchronicities, I go, okay, there's something. The universe is trying to bring my attention to something here. So I watched another documentary about a family that take it. They have a sick kid in Ireland, and
Yeah.
he has some incurable disease. I can't remember the disease he had, but they took him to see this psychic surgeon in Brazil. And in Brazil, psychic surgeons is a known phenomena where you have
Oh,
these healers.
psychic. Wow. Psychic surgeons.
Psychic surgeon. Yeah, if you Google psychic surgeon Brazil, you'll see these healers, and it's like it was crazy. Like the documentary, again, it was on RTE television in Ireland, and and it was amazing. And if I remember correctly, that their kid got cured. But just even watching the documentary, this psychic surgeon was just pulling out tumors and stuff from people, and he'd put his hand over where he'd put an incision without even placing stitches, and the skin was binding, and it was like, oh my God, like it was like if you if I didn't trust RTE as a quality news outlet or professional like CBC, like you'd say
Yes.
that's baloney,
That's
but
right.
it was a really impressive phenomena.
Whoa.
And my intuition, like I say, I'm extremely intuitive. Like I get specific messages, and I got the intuitive hit. I was to go see this psychic surgeon in Brazil, John Deus, John of God, I think is the English version of the name.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so that weekend, I met my buddies in a pub in Dublin, and before I got to tell them I'm going to Brazil, which like was my firm plan to go, they got into the conversation first to say, Adrian, myself and Robert were just talking about going to do the Inca Trail in Peru in the fall. Are you interested in coming to South America? So not only was the universe planning to get me to go to South America, but in those intervening few days, it had arranged for my friends to decide to go and do the Inca Trail in Peru and to ask me that weekend if I would consider going. And they were already planning to go to Brazil. Like they were planning Inca Trail Peru, Rio de Janeiro, Foz de Iguazu in Brazil as well, and Buenos Aires in Argentina. And I said, "Oh my God, lads, he's not going to believe this, but I was just about to tell you that I'm going to go to Brazil." So
Wow.
yeah, so it was crazy. Like this is how my life pans out. Like I just follow
Do
the
you,
breadcrumbs.
do you mind giving them a shout out if they end up watching this?
Oh yeah, like it's Mark Russell and Robert Morgan back in Dublin, and
Yeah.
yeah, they can vouch for that trip and how if they this is going back 20 plus years, so I don't know if they'll remember the specific the specific conversation in the pub, but they can certainly correlate to the trips. And
Yeah.
um, so I added a week in, like going to see the psychic surgeon is not something my friends would have been into. And so I added a week on. They flew back after 3 weeks. I spent that extra week and I flew to Brasilia, the capital of Brazil. I had a friend that I'd known that worked at the Canadian Embassy in Brasilia and stayed at his place the first night. And then I took a 9 hour bus ride the next day to get out to where this guy, John Deus, was based in his kind of camp. And people came from all over the world, mostly Americans. But
Yeah.
to get healed, or I was going as a healthy person. I wasn't going to receive a cure or anything. It was just fascination for from that documentary and then getting the intuitive hit to go see him.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that was. And then I say I spent a month in South America during that trip. And when you go away on vacation for 4 weeks into a different continent you've never been, it can really open up your travel mind and travel bug. And I say, excuse me, I'd never traveled out of Europe or North America up to that point. And Peru was quite impoverished. Like houses were made of mud bricks and stuff, and
Yeah.
yet people were really happy and stuff. And I felt safe. And I thought, oh, I think I could go to Africa. And that was always a plan I had even as a teenager, like to go spend a year or two in Africa.
Yeah.
So when I came back from that trip, I realized, okay, I could definitely do Africa at this stage. It's not a hindrance, or I don't have any qualms about going at this stage. So I sent an email off to, I think it was email. Yeah, back then it must have been email. I reached out to that doctor in Kenya saying, you might remember me. I met you in a restaurant in Dublin X amount of months ago, or maybe it was, I can't remember what time frame it changed.
Yeah.
And yeah, he got back to me saying, yeah, he'd love to have me over for a year. And so I handed in my notice at the embassy. And then when I had this free time opened up, and at that stage I'd done some property development in Ireland that I mentioned, and I had a ton of money in the bank and stuff. And I thought, oh, if I wanted to travel around the world and I could just take 6 months off and travel around the world and just get that under my belt. So I told the guy in Kenya I would get there in June. And then just after Christmas, so I started my travels and went back to South America again and worked my way up from Ushuaia at the bottom of Argentina. And so I could have done that trip to Antarctica, but I didn't quite follow my gut on that one. But yeah, so I managed to go through all five continents from there and then arrived in Africa, spent 6 months in Kenya, then shifted to another Irish NGO that offered me a position in Sudan. So spent a year in Sudan. And then when I finished up, I did an overland trip from Nairobi to Cape Town. So that was
Okay.
overland over 7 weeks in 7 countries. And one of my friends came down to meet me in South Africa. and we rented a car, and I took him across to Port Elizabeth and kind of pretty much seen a lot of South Africa before I left. And then I subsequently went back and toured Egypt. So if I mapped out everywhere I was in Africa, it literally goes from Alexandria all the way down to Cape Town. And so I
And it
can
connects.
draw a line right through Africa of between working in Sudan, visiting Egypt, and then that overland trip tidies up the rest of that routing.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and then the book that I wrote is set in Egypt, and I say I'd spent a year in Sudan and flying into remote desert villages and flying over the Nile River, going through the Sahara Desert, and those images, and I could see like oases and wadis every so often in the middle of the Sahara Desert, and you hear of an oasis, but until you see it with your eyes, you can't credit that they actually exist. And in the there's a chapter based in the desert at a wadi, and yeah, so
What's a
all
wadi?
the sorry,
Oh, what's a wadi?
the wadi is a pool of water in the desert.
Okay.
So I think it's a maybe Arabic word, but it's like yeah, it's water where there shouldn't be water. And typically around a wadi, you have an oasis, like you have some vegetation that's growing around it. And certainly in my experience of flying in and out of Sudan was you would see little like mud huts, like tiny little villages at a wadi because it could support life when all around you is pure desert. And when you're flying at whatever to 20,000 or 30,000 feet over the Sahara, like it's just sand as far as the eye can see. And so to watch a river go through a endless desert is, I mean, it doesn't make sense that a river would flow into one end of a desert and 1,000 miles later actually come out of it. But that's the Nile River, and so
Yeah.
that amazement of the Nile flowing right through the desert is featured, comes up quite a few times in the book. Um, so yeah, so all those life experiences, all those intuitive nudges that brought me to different locations and different experiences, the life experiences, a lot of it has ended up in this book. So
Yeah.
the Temple of Miryam, and it's about Miryam is actually Mary Magdalene,
Yeah.
and she's the high priestess of an Egyptian mystery school. And Yeshua, it's kind of set in the missing years of Jesus. I
Right.
use his Aramaic name, Yeshua, in the book.
Yeah.
And he's after spending 6 years in India and Tibet as a seeker, learning Buddhism and Hinduism. And he then makes his way to Egypt to study at the mystery schools. He meets Miriam, who's the high priestess, and his teacher, and they fall for each other. And then the next is the next 3 months at the mystery school of them, a relationship evolving, and yeah, book two is the next 3 years at that mystery school, and takes them from the age 26 to 29, and then book three will
That's in
be
Alexandria, right?
it's actually set in Cairo. So
Cairo, right.
like
Cairo. That's
they're
right.
occasionally in Alexandria is certainly mentioned a few times in the book. But the mystery school, there was one in Heliopolis, which is just outside of Cairo. But for the purpose of the book, I thought it's easier to pronounce Cairo and for people to get envision the location in their head than it is to say Heliopolis. So I just keep it as Cairo because everybody can relate to Cairo and the pyramids and the Nile River, and it's just easier to immerse the reader into the setting. So
Hmm. So, wouldn't you say it's also another synchronicity that today is April 5th, 2026, which is a Christian holiday? Would you kind of relate to that as well?
yeah, it's Easter Sunday, and this morning I was invited to be the service reader at the Calgary Unitarians, and I gave a little talk on the history of Easter, that it's about the festival of Ishtar, which dates back 6,000 years to 4,000 BC.
Yeah.
And I mentioned the goddess Ishtar in the book too. They talk
Yeah.
about the descent of Ishtar, and that would have been a well-known legend at that time of this. The book is set in 26 AD, and yeah, so I just talk about how Ishtar was the goddess of love and fertility, and the symbols of the festival are eggs and bunny rabbits, which are symbols of fertility.
Yeah.
And the festival was always at the first full moon after the spring equinox. And Easter Sunday is the first Sunday after the first full moon after the spring equinox. Like it's still
Yeah.
the same lunar calendar of 4000 BC, Samaria.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's and Unitarians are very non-dogmatic. It's there's very few Christian churches you could talk about Easter predating Christ, and that it has a history going back 6,000 years. And but yeah, Unitarians are non-dogmatic, all-inclusive. So it was a nice environment that I could be the guest speaker and I have a fascination for theology and philosophy and the evolution of philosophies. And in the book, it's if you've read the book Sophie's World, where it's kind of like a comparative
Isn't there a
philosophy.
movie also, Sophie's World?
It might actually be, I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
I think I saw the movie.
Oh, okay. And it's about
Yes.
like the comparing different philosophies. And
I just remember it's very magical. That's what I
okay.
remember. Yeah.
It sounds like I haven't seen the movie,
Yeah.
and I've only heard of the book. I haven't actually read the book. My sister read it, and she said this book reminds her of Sophie's World. And then I researched a bit of Sophie's World. I said, okay, yeah, it's because he's coming from traditions of Buddhism and Hinduism. So he's big, and she's has the Egyptian mystery school, and there's a
Yeah.
lot of like the surrounding Hellenistic thought of like from Greece and Egypt of the time that there's discussions go on about the origins of life and purpose of life, whatever. And that's all stuff that's just like gravy for me. And so I could have the characters have discussions involving all of those different belief systems. And it's a real wonderful way for me to enjoy my passion and put it in the context of those characters. So,
So the Unitarian Church, is that the one on Trans Canada and Center Street, like close to there, or is there another one?
no, that's the one right on
Okay,
16th
yeah.
Ave. And yeah, I
Yeah.
guess it's near Center Street. So yeah.
Yeah, maybe like maybe Second Street Northwest or something.
Yeah, yeah, that's the very location. So
Yeah. And there's a car dealership lot maybe on that same block around the corner, I think, or
okay, quite
somewhere around
possibly.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean I spent 31 years living in Alberta, most of that being in Calgary, so I'm in Montreal now and I have fond memories of Calgary. I'm
Yeah,
actually
and
planning, God willing, to be in Calgary at the end of the month. So
oh, well,
yeah,
we'll
it'll be
have to meet
nice
up for a
to.
coffee or a beer when you get
Why
here.
not? Why not?
Yeah,
I would love to. Why
yeah,
not? Yes. Thank you. Okay, it's a date.
cool.
So a mandate.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I kind of had some questions prepared for you. So basically, would you say that your life is to a significant extent shaped by these inklings of synchronicities in the world, in your life around you, and then kind of going into the regular life of, the workforce, the 9 to 5, and then sort of having, maybe call it your awakening, when you were compelled by the compassion and the giving and the love and the service that the doctor was doing in Sudan, and then was it the very next day or like very soon thereafter you learned about the psychic surgeon in Brazil? So like you had this sort of openness to, maybe one way to put it is like to the quantum or to the synchronicity of life or to the spiritual reality of our world. And then that started to unfold for you and unfold for you. Can you sort of comment on the correlation between your backstory, your background, and how you've noticed that really reality does not work the way that most people have been taught in school?
Yeah, I call it the field or the unified field.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I just try and I get nudges from it and I endeavor to follow those nudges and these million to one by million to one synchronicities just unfold from me just listening to those little nudges. And sometimes I get like a nudge to do something, I'll sometimes check my watch and it would be exactly like 10 o'clock, like right on the button. Like in 5 seconds time, it won't be lined up as perfectly as it is. And that to me is another little kind of confirmation, like, yeah, this is what that message you just got wasn't just like a random thought, that this is a download or a hit, I like to call
A
it.
download, yeah, a hit, yeah. Okay, I like it.
And I've been getting that since I've been a teenager. So it's most of my life. I would say even actually as a kid, I remember my mum gave me a watch when I was maybe 10 years old, 9 or 10 in school. And I would find when I would occasionally look at my watch, it would be exactly on the hour. And then I'd look at my watch later in the day and it would exactly be on the hour again. I thought like, how come every time I look at my watch, it's precisely on an hour? Like, and I mean within 5, 10 seconds of being off the like perfectly aligned.
Yeah,
So I was making an association of these this my the communication, let's say the synchronicity, literally synchronicity of the hands on my watch. And then I think at some point in time, I started to associate that with a download I just got. And then I would just confirm it maybe with the synchronicity on the watch. And I go, oh, okay, this is yeah, I'm supposed to go to South America to see this doctor. And just to go back a couple of minutes, might have been a few months between that documentary about the guy in Africa and the guy in Brazil. I think it might have been the
yeah.
same
Okay.
TV channel and same documentary series. I love documentaries as a just as a way of I'm not great at reading, and so if I can watch a documentary or a movie or something that's I can learn much easier that way. And nowadays, YouTube is, if I'm trying to learn something new, I'll often just YouTube it. If it's how to
Yeah,
fix something
same
or
here.
whatever, like I can't read an instruction manual that easily, but I can watch a YouTube video 10 times over and go, okay, I think I can do that and take it from there. So,
Yes, I would say I prefer auditory learning, yet when something is really up my alley, really interests me greatly, then I don't mind spending, I think I've had days where I've just read, in my past. So I do like reading, but when I can hear it, I actually like it even more. And then like the next level is to listen to a book while I'm driving. I absolutely love driving to bits. So,
yeah, I love audiobooks too. And
yeah.
actually, Temple of Miriam, as of last week, is now published on audible.com too. I
Yes,
got an
congratulations.
Irish voice actor to do it.
Okay, an Irish person.
Yeah, yeah. My cousin is in the movie industry, and he had a friend who's a voiceover actor, so he put me in touch with him, and yeah. So as of March 30th, so just literally a week ago, it went live on Audible, and
Yes.
yeah. So I've been trying to promote that aspect of it too, and yeah, it's been keeping me busy to try and give the book the best birth into the world that I can give it. So.
So I've had a chance to read some of your book, and I would describe it as this journey into the untapped aspects of, spiritual sides of the greats of our history, whether they're mythical or whether they're real, whether they're legends, whether they're actual historical events. But we have this as humankind, we have this, it's in our DNA to seek for the spiritual aspects of life. And really, it's also, I actually did put it in Chat GPT at some point, and I looked for it right before our interview to like refresh my memory and get some terms from that. It was a beautiful summary of like the themes. One of the themes I want to say was just simply that the traditional history of faith and religion doesn't do justice to what actually happened a lot of the time. There could be things that are, maybe inadvertently or maybe not so inadvertently hidden or concealed, and that there is potentially, maybe a concerted effort to kind of hide some of that beauty and power of the innate individual and group spirituality that we have as humans. So I actually did. I love actually reading, also reading out and also recording myself. So I actually started recording your book on audio, and I thought I would just surprise you and I would just send it to you like the collection of MP3s, and then you beat me to it and you already had it. Um, Voiceover actor, performed. So yeah, so really enjoyed the first chapter. And so tell us a little bit more about the book. Do you want to share a reading? I'd love to hear much more about the book if you don't mind.
Sure. So the book has actually been coming at me for, I said I've been intuitive, even psychic for most of my life.
Yes.
And I remember seeing the movie The Da Vinci Code in Ireland. Oh, it could be 30 years ago. Oh my God, it's 30 years ago. And I remember coming out of it and I got a download that I was going to do something like that, like
Yes.
in that genre. And I thought, oh, interesting. And I remember some years later, I was in Canada and I went on a date to see Jesus Christ Superstar in Toronto.
Yes.
And I remember coming
Which
out
is
of
a
that and I got a
musical?
download that I was going to create something along those lines too. And I thought, interesting. But it was always very much at the back of my mind. Like I would get a download, but didn't necessarily do anything with it. And actually, even just recently, I realized I got a download maybe 10, 15 years ago to buy a book called Fugens Atlantia. And it's about Hieros Gamos, the sacred marriage rites. And I
Okay.
spent a fortune, like the book, like sometimes on Amazon, the book is out of print or something, and the only one that's
Yeah.
available is $200.
Yeah.
And I got this clear guidance I was to get the book, and I thought, oh my God, it's $200. Doesn't look interesting, looks boring. But I've learned just to follow my guidance. So I got the book and it was as boring and like it was a copy from, I don't know, it's a recently published book, but the actual text was first written in the 1600s or something. And it's like
Yeah.
old English. It's not an easy read. It's like, I don't, why the hell am I reading this? And I don't think I ever finished it. I think I tried it numerous times. And it only struck me there recently that like, that book was about the Heros Gamos. And here I am 15 years later, and I'm actually writing a book where the sacred marriage rites is a key theme throughout this book. So even though the book came together pretty quickly in the end, but it's been in some ways it's been coming at me for 30 years. And even many of the spiritual books that I've been reading, I say because of that accident that my brothers had when I was 8, I've been like the stuff that I did read when I start reading as a teenager, like was spiritual, philosophy, psychology. It was like it wasn't your typical 16-year-old reading, I don't know, whatever 16-year-olds might read, fantasy or something. I was reading
Yeah.
books written by Jesuits and stuff. And yeah, so like I've been very a deep thinker and a very philosophical from quite a young age. And the first books that I was reading, and like the books, like if you're familiar with Byron Katie and her work, The Living, Loving What Is, and the work.
Not yet. No. No, I
Okay,
might have heard the name, but
okay.
I
Well,
haven't read
she
it yet.
she had an awakening of her own, and
Okay.
she just by questioning her thoughts, like she checked herself into a halfway house, and she didn't even consider herself worthy of sleeping in the bed, so she was sleeping on the floor, and just her constant negative thinking just was driving her crazy, and like a cockroach or something walked across her leg, and it just brought her into the present moment and got her thinking, oh, why am I lying on the floor? And she
Yeah.
just had an epiphany, and she just questioned her thoughts and she checked herself out at a halfway house, and people started to come to her because they considered her to be enlightened, and she didn't use the word enlightened. She just said she found freedom and freedom from her unquestioned thoughts. And in the book, there's a very distinctive chapter where Yeshua kind of he catches Miryam who's falling from a stool in the library, and he
Yes.
has this epiphany of an awakening of questioning his thoughts, and so all the spiritual books that I've been reading over 30 plus years, um, some of the gems are have been kind of built up into this book. One of my favorite authors in the spiritual world is Neil Donald Walsh, from the Conversations with God series of books. And
Yep.
I've read most of his books. Like I probably read about 25 of his books. And I've met him a few times at retreats and different things. And I do, even a
Amazing.
couple of weeks ago, I did a Zoom retreat with him on a weekend. And I've a lot of what I learned from his material is dappled throughout these chapters too. So
Yeah.
it's a compilation of my own spiritual journey, my time in Africa, my travels by and large, and the different philosophies. Like I've gone to Buddhist meditations for over the years and stuff. I've studied a lot I read a lot of Deepak Chopra's material, which has a lot of Hindu philosophy and stuff in it. So it's and like some of the missing years, like legends are that Yeshua did actually spend 3 years or some time in India and some time in Tibet. And so I just pulled from those legends, like from the Knights Templar and the Gnostic Gospels and stuff. So I just pulled what straws of information actually exists that could be historically correct, and then just beef that out with my own spiritual pad and fill out the characters based around that. So
And when did you get the book that has to do with marriage rights? And what was the name again? Did it have something that sounds like Atlantis?
yeah, I think it was Fugens Atlantia or something. Like it's a Latin name. Um, I can't even remember the name of the author. But I get and I got guided to get that book 15, 20 years ago. So that gives you an idea how this book has been kind of trickling down to me in the little drips and drabs over the years. And then in the past 6 months, it's just been flowing to until we got it to where it is today. So
You know what the book reminded me is The Alchemist. I'm thinking you probably read The Alchemist, yeah?
I have, yeah.
Yeah, because
Like,
there's a journey. There's a journey, and then at the end there's a coming to the self, so to speak, like just realizing that what I was seeking for was always within me, so to speak.
yeah, and it's I so there's definitely even like some of the online comparisons that I've seen, like when I look Google my book and stuff, it's some of those references mention Pueblo Quelelo and The
Yep.
Alchemist, and actually there was another the actual book cover was it there was a after I the day I wrote the first chapter, and I was home that night and I was just browsing on Facebook, and this image came up of a character that looks just like Yeshua here, but with a lady with like a Caucasian lady with flowers in her hair, and it looked just
Okay.
like it was meant to be Jesus and Mary Magdalene, and I thought like, oh my God, like what's the odds of and it was a Puelo Kelelo quote with that painting with that image in the background.
Wow.
And I thought like, wow, like what was the coincidence again? I talk about the synchronicities and seeing an image not unlike the book cover the night I wrote the first chapter was like, oh my God, I think I just found my book cover. And
Yeah.
obviously in the book, Miryam is Egyptian, comes from Egyptian or Ethiopian royalty.
Okay,
So
yeah.
I needed to make her like dark skin,
Yeah.
and so obviously that figure has changed completely. But the essence of the male figure is pretty much the essence of what you see on the cover now, and that's just part of how the book has come to me. Even the book cover came as a synchronicity on chapter one, so with a Pueblo Calelo quote, and now we are talking about one of his best-selling books. So.
So, A Temple of Miriam is currently available on Amazon in paperback, on Amazon Kindle, on Audible, which is also an Amazon company now.
Yeah.
And gosh, I remember when Audible was like MP3s, downloadable MP3s. So that's how way back I go as well. And then is there any other like Barnes and Noble? Do you have it on Barnes and Noble currently? Is there any other places where people can fetch their copy?
No, last week I got the ISPN registered numbers through the federal government, so I can potentially start putting it into channeling it into bookstores. I've been reaching out to some literary agents and publishers too.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping I have some professional to take it off me to bring it down those channels. But self-publishing with Amazon is relatively straightforward. It's like there are some frustrations just trying to get it all into the right format and stuff. Um, but yeah, I'm hoping that I'll find a literary agent that will help me market it to Barnes and Noble and Chapters and all that those kind of places. So
So, well, that's awesome. So I look forward to getting my own. I got my own Kindle copy. So
excellent.
yeah,
I can't
uh,
sign it for you, but
yeah.
but yeah,
Maybe
it's I'm glad
I
I'm delighted you have a copy of it. So
I think I should get my paperback so I can get my autograph.
yeah,
Your
well, actually,
autograph. Yeah.
I always have a box of the books in the car. So when we meet for
Nice.
that coffee, I'll
Nice.
happily give you a complimentary copy signed by the author. So.
Perfect.
Uh,
Awesome. So now, do you realize that being spiritual or as deeply and and awarely, like acutely awarely spiritual as you are, call it, being aware of the field and how we're interacting with the field, with the universe, with God, with with the higher power, with this collective conscious, whatever you want to call it. Do you realize that most people are not like that? Like, how has the experience been living in the world that almost tries to like psychically, operate that out of us?
well, my friends just knew the craziness of the synchronicities. Like they were part of some of those synchronicities. Like the day I tried to tell them I was going to Brazil, and they invited me to go to Brazil, Peru, and like so that they're and that's just one story of many. So they're aware of just how crazy those synchronicities have been over the decades. And that they've been understanding. They might call me a bit crazy or something at times, but they're often there as they're unraveling. These synchronicities are coming together, and they're going, "What the fuck?" So it's not just
Yeah.
me that gets like bowled over. Like those
Yeah.
around me can are witnessing it too in real time. Um, yeah, I've just learned, and I say I'm a huge maths person. Like at school, I would always get an A or B in maths, physics, accounting, and languages was always my weak point. So,
Yeah.
in all transparency, I've used Claude AI as a wordsmith to help me put this book together.
Okay. Very well.
And if it wasn't for AI, I never would have got the book from the back of my head, where it's been for 30 odd years out into the world. So full transparency. Some people are scared off by AI. For me, it's been a huge boon, and I can genuinely say that the book would never have made it into the world if it wasn't for the introduction of AI.
Yeah.
So if and at the author's note at the back of the book, I'm fully transparent about the how the book came together with synchronicities, with AI, and yeah, just my own spiritual path, like in my own travels and whatnot. So yeah, full disclosure, I'm not trying to say I've written this book, slogged away at it 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
I definitely had AI help me put it together. So
So I would still like to, if you're in the mood, hear a reading. But before that, what do you think about the singularity?
I associate the singularity with a black hole and the point of no return. So that's
Uh-huh.
probably the astrophysical,
I
quantum
mean,
physical
to do with AI
definition.
getting smart enough that it can improve itself and like AI starts to get better and better at a rate that it's just kind of it's off the rails, so to speak.
Yeah, I did a course with Mind Valley AI Mastery
Yeah,
last year.
yeah,
And yeah, they said like every 3 months AI doubles in speed. So it's
yeah.
almost like the Moore's Law for the microchip, except it's 3 months instead of every 18 months. Um, yeah, it's like I say bring it on. Like what I've been seeing like online, like how profound AI was with some people that I follow on social media and stuff. And I thought, oh my God, like this like from my own spiritual journey and reading numerous books and stuff, when something rings true, it maybe my intuition or whatever goes like that's a deep truth. And that broadened my mind then to want to create an app like to help people from a spiritual slash psychological level. And
Yes.
then that app, it's still a GPT out there, but a custom GPT. But
Yes.
the I
The
was
name
then
again?
able to evolve that AI integration, not just into an app, but actually to help put the book together. So I've hopefully tapped into some of that profoundness that I was seeing from a spiritual depth, and that was resonating with me, and that's incorporated into the book as well. So.
And what's the name of the app? And is it available publicly?
No, it's just a custom GPT. If you have a Chat GPT account, I can certainly maybe I don't know if you can search for Soul. It's called Soul Space AI. Soul
Okay.
Space being one word. But
Okay.
I'm not sure if I have to send you an invitation for it. If I do, I'll text it to you after the
Sure, I'd like to check it out. Yeah, I do
sure.
have a ChatGPT account.
Okay, perfect. I'll send it to you. So.
Yeah, I'm pretty much really easing off Googling nowadays and just going to straight to ChatGPT.
Yeah, I think most people are. I moved over to Claude and I found Claude much more capable. Like I was trying to build a book out with ChatGPT and building out scenes, and I was creating like all these scenes, but I knew it was going to be a nightmare trying to integrate them back into a cohesive story. But I
Okay, yeah.
realized with Claude that I could work with long form text and create it at a chapter level, and that was huge in terms of
Yeah.
accelerating the production of the book. So yeah, and yeah, I highly and even in some ways, I think in recent versions of ChatGPT, they tried to tighten up on it in terms of putting these guardrails around it, and Claude is still very much open to a spiritual world and profoundness, and it doesn't try and restrict itself. If you go in with depth in your questions and prompts, that it will meet you there. And where
Yes.
ChatGPT has intentionally tried to engineer that out of it, Claude by Anthropic is much more like enjoying the ride. So.
Wow. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna try Claude too then.
Yeah, hey, cool. Yeah, it's fantastic. And you can, if you just say you want to migrate your ChatGPT account over to Claude and you've built up this relationship and the GPT knows so much about you, you might say, oh, I don't want to lose 2 years of its knowledge about me. But you can actually ask, tell ChatGPT you're moving over to Claude to give it all the data it knows about you as a file,
Sure.
and you
Sure.
can upload that file to Claude, and that gives Claude a head start from the relationship you've already built up with the ChatGPT knowledge. So
Fair enough. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely feel like I'm a bit of a laggard in terms of like the really cool and the really hip, technologically hip people have been using AI for a while, and now I'm like, you know, novice to intermediate level user of the one AI that I know. And I just realized just how much more there is to know and, and how far behind a lot of people are in the sense that, a lot of people don't necessarily, they're not seeking to optimize how they do daily tasks or how do they, analyze certain scenarios to do with their decision making, et cetera, et cetera. And, so it's really neat to see this acceleration of humankind's development that is happening right in front of our eyes. Would you like to comment on, anything to do with, in my opinion, there seems to be an increased rate of change in human society, even if there were no AI necessarily, in the data centers and the energy demand. But definitely that's very obvious to everybody that is accelerating. Every 3 months, it's what, doubling or whatever it is. So, do you care to comment on what you're noticing in the world? Maybe not. I'm not really, I don't care to get into politics, but I mean, that's certainly, everybody knows about things political, but anything you'd like to share, like what are some of your takes on humankind's or civilization's changes? Do you notice that it's a change, or is it simply a repeat of, pre-existing cycles and patterns? How do you view that?
Well, certainly AI is new to the scene, and yeah, I see it as a huge boon to society and mankind. Like it'll be used for good and for bad. Like the people searching for cures for cancer are going to be using AI to help them with CRISPR gene technology, gene editing technology, and that chemical treatment that they give you for cancer and stuff. So all those
Yeah.
people are going to have access
Chemotherapy. Yeah.
chemotherapy. All
Yeah.
AI is going to be helping to progress all those cures. Like
Yeah.
and it'll be, I mean, one powerful AI system could be the same as 300 lab scientists working away.
Yeah.
So just the ability to accelerate cures and the material sciences and like the climate crisis and stuff, how AI can come up with solutions and help us address all the most pressing challenges that humanity faces. Having
Yeah.
said that, like the companies that make bombs and make ways of killing people easier and more efficient and more technologically advanced, like those engineers and scientists are going to be using AI to help them in their work to make the better bomb. So it'll make a better
Wow.
mousetrap, it'll make better cancer treatment, and it'll make more effective bombs.
Wow.
So like just there's kind of two sides of the sword, and that's just the nature of any technology, I guess. But overall, like I would be relatively optimistic on humanity's trajectory, and that the benefits will outweigh the disadvantages, and that we'll hopefully wake ourselves up before we knock ourselves out with nuclear weapons or whatever. And yeah, and I
Amen.
think we're protected anyway. So.
Right. So, speaking of being protected, I have my own sort of faith and spiritual beliefs. And that pretty much boils down to that I believe that we're protected. Definitely, we don't want to be reckless, but so how would you explain this aspect of being protected? Like is it how are we being protected, and can we, do something to be more protected? Maybe that's one way to put it.
Well, just this evening, I seen a YouTube video of it was a congressional investigation into UFOs in the United States through the U.S. military, and
Yep.
there was a leaked video in Yemen. So the U.S. was doing some bombing to Houthi rebels in Yemen, and there was this, I think they call it a Hellfire missile, and there's
Okay.
a Hellfire missile being fired at this UFO, and you're seeing it from a night vision camera from, I don't know, a helicopter or a fighter jet that's 20,000 feet. So you're just seeing this trajectory coming here, and you see a Hellfire missile coming in, and the missile pretty much bounces off it, and the UFO, I think they have another word than UFO these days, but the UFO kind of it wobbles but continues on, and the Hellfire missile then continues on too. But it's obvious that they hit, and yet it didn't explode. It didn't affect the trajectory of the UFO. And so yeah, if
Wow.
you search on YouTube for Hellfire missile
Yeah.
UFO Yemen,
Okay.
and you'll see the footage. It was in the
Wow.
news and stuff. It came out during those congressional hearings into U.S. military UFO.
This was recent. This was just they're actually having those congressional hearings.
Yeah, yeah, it's all from the past few months. And I think the Yemen bombings were only a few months ago too. So it's all recent news, recent events. It was
Wow.
elite, and even they said it was actually a news clip from some news station. So I know you can't believe everything you see on YouTube, but it seemed like a genuine U.S. news channel recording of a report on that congressional hearing. And yeah, so I don't doubt if there is more, I don't doubt there's more advanced life in the universe. Like the universe, Big Bang was 13 billion years ago. Uh, Planet Earth has a history going back as an actual entity for 5 billion years. So there could
Mm-hmm.
be planets out there that have billions of years ahead of us and advanced
Yeah.
life.
Yep.
And if you can imagine humanity in 500 years, but imagine humanity in 5 million years, assuming that we're still around, and how technology can advance in that time frame.
Yep.
So I don't doubt with the vastness. I mean, they say there's up to 20 trillion galaxies in the universe. And if each of those galaxies has over 100 million stars, and each of those stars has an average of a half dozen planets, that the whole idea that life only evolved on this one planet when there's trillions of galaxies with billions
Yep.
of stars with billions more planets, that
Wow.
it's invariable that life has evolved throughout the universe, and
Yep.
some of that has got like a much bigger head start than we have here. And I don't doubt that they have the ability to reach us with their technology. And I think if Trump and Putin and whoever else, Netanyahu, tried to have an all-out nuclear war tomorrow, that I think those guys would use their technology to press pause and just make sure we don't put ourselves back to the Stone Age. So.
Kind of like a kind of like a spirit guide of sorts.
Yeah, I think I suspect they allow us our free will to screw up to a certain extent, but I don't think they'd let the entire planetary system go back to nuclear annihilation and have another 100,000 years to try and start re-evolving after a nuclear winter. Um, so I'd like to think at that level we're protected, but
Yeah,
who
I like
knows?
it. I like it. Yeah, I agree that we're protected and that you know, even though there's like some kind of a, let's call it a fail-safe mechanism that, that helps humankind, that each one of us needs to do our utmost to help each other. I have a friend by the name of Frank McDonald in Edmonton, and he's the first person that I heard the phrase. I mean, maybe I heard it before, but it's the first person that I distinctly remember hearing it and then consciously set to remember it, and that is that we have to help each other. And so that's one of the things that I think is a theme between all people that care to, to basically like live a conscious life, to help each other, to take care of the environment, to take care of whether you want to say Mother Earth, Gaia, whether you want to say, fellow man, fellow human, right? Take care of the animals, take care of the waters, take care of the air, right? That we have this drive to give, we have this drive to serve. And for me, the way that I look at my life and my sort of business involvement and community involvement and my family involvement is that I'm happy that I have an opportunity to give to another human being, to another, you know, sentient being, like I'm thinking like pets, animals in general, to, just do something that it's like what comes to mind is littering. If you've seen people that they maybe throw their cigarette butt on the ground versus even if they're a smoker, they might pick it up or not throw it down, or their paper falls out of their pocket and they pick it up. And so I'm one of those people where if I happen to have garbage fall down, I will pick it up. Right?
Yeah.
I've heard maybe that's the is that the scouts, or who has the saying? Oh, that's actually, if you've ever heard of, I've actually visited some of them. It's the rainbow gatherings, and they're actually in Europe and in North America. And they're basically, it's kind of like a hippie commune, and people come together and for about a month in a remote area with a well, kind of like in the desert. So there's water. They bring in their food, they bring in their supplies, and they have a festival. There's no alcohol, there's no drugs, just simply humans enjoying each other's company, having a spiritual experience, having a communion with the higher power, with the land, and taking care of each other and giving to each other. And so in there, I think they say that they want to, and that's probably from the scouts as well, that they want to leave the land better and cleaner than they found it. And also, the more that we give to each other, the more that we have to give. And I believe that in life, we have these challenges. And I want to actually ask you about some of the challenges that you've experienced, that as a result of going through those challenges and going through those painful experiences, we grow. And then as a result of that growth, we unearth our purpose. So, would you care to comment?
Yeah, I think actually the First Nations are the ones that have that philosophy about leaving the earth better than you found it. Um, yeah, and it's without challenges. Like in my book, it's a famous African proverb: "Calm seas don't make for skillful sailors." And it's actually a book that I feature in a line that I feature in the book too, and especially with it's set in Africa, so it's easy for me to put an African proverb into the text. So yeah, I don't doubt that like yeah, we come into this reality to face challenges, and the from those challenges we earn our grit, and we kind of come into a world of contrast. Neil Donald Walsh talks about this world as the world of the relative versus the world of the absolute where we came from.
Yeah.
And in the world of the absolute, it's just love and light. And this world has darkness and highs and lows and hot and cold and up and down. And we get to experience through the contrasts of the darkness and the light. And through that we get to overcome challenges and kind of earn our grit or whatever that expression is. And yeah, so that's I mean, and that very philosophy appears time and time again in the book too, as like the mystery school call it like the world of the Plamora, where you have the unified being that is all of
I haven't heard that
God.
term. The world of the Plemora.
Yeah, so that's
Okay.
it goes back to like the Egyptian mystery school, like the Egyptian term. And then the duat is the world of duality, where
Yeah.
we're down here and the one becomes the many, and we're interacting and kind of God gets to know itself through relationship. And that's very much a philosophy that comes through time and time again in the book. So
Okay. Can you explain that one more time? So basically, there is the absolute, which is also in this case through the Egyptian tradition, and then there is the world of the relative, this material plane. So how did the Egyptian tradition, how does it explain it again?
So it basically says the time before time is when, let's say, before the Big Bang, if you were to look at it from an astrophysics perspective, there was just a single entity of all that is living as a single being. And
Right. Yeah.
then, let's say, if you look at it from the Big Bang, just scattering out the gazillion atoms that formed the physical world,
Yeah.
that the world of the seen. So let's say if you look at it, you could look at it from the world of the unseen and the world of the seen, and that this physical world exists to have the relative of highs and lows, hot and cold, up and down, love and fear. Um, yeah, that we get to experience all that in this reality, but the ultimate reality is that we're just a light being, a singular consciousness, and that consciousness split itself up to come into this world to get to know itself from one to one, from relationships, from uh, falling in love with a sunset or a mountain or a tree, and just seeing the
Mm-hmm.
world in the context of having had a shitty day the day before, and
Yes.
yet the next day being just bowled over by the most amazing sunrise or a star-filled night, and that ability to have yeah the up and the down that this reality, this density offers, that level of contrast. And if it was just ever the world of the absolute, that we might never, even though it's all love and light and all bliss and paradise, but without anything to compare it to, we don't really get to experience it because there's nothing outside the bliss. And this world offers us the world where there's sometimes no bliss and it's painful and it's agony and it's strife and it's challenges, but it's through those challenges that we actually gain an appreciation for the love and light that we are at our true essence. So
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. So, Adrian, thinking back to your earlier days as as a young person, as a teenager, as a young adult, as a person in your 30s, like along the way, have you had consciously, have you had desires to accomplish certain goals, or has it been simply mostly being guided and when the time was right, you would follow that guidance, or has there been along the way certain specific things you wanted to accomplish? I know that you've done real estate development, so that's on a sort of a business kind of very straightforward type of a thing that you felt a calling to develop this real estate property and you went for it. But overall in life, like if you were to look at like have you had major goals that have sort of guided you along the way? And then what type of struggles have you come in contact with, and how did you overcome those struggles?
Well, I guess like my guidance would often just be like a breadcrumb for the next email I write or whatever. So that
Yeah,
could just be very much like small data, like apparently inconsequential, but for whatever reason I'm supposed to do it, and I just learned
yeah,
just to go with it. So I just say I get 20 such downloads a day that are just like take the dog for a walk or whatever. Like it might just be the
sure,
small stuff.
sure.
Like on the bigger scale, like if you were to ask me like my ultimate mission here in the world, I might come
Yes,
up with say like helping to bring about heaven on earth might just
yes,
be my philosophical mission in this world, in this life. Um, and maybe all those tiny little breadcrumbs that I follow and those 20 little downloads per day is part of that bigger mission at the end of the day. But I say sometimes it's just telling me to take the dog for a walk. Um, And then, yeah, in terms of the
I like that.
challenges, like,
Heaven
yeah,
on earth,
I
I
don't
like that.
doubt that those challenges of like the calm seas don't make for skillful sailors. If it was all smooth sailing, there would be no triumph, there'd be no sense of accomplishment. And this world offers those disappointments and those challenges that when you do eventually break through with something that is a success, that you get to pat yourself on the back and say, "Oh, I did that. That was like." Such a challenge, and this book has had many challenges to try and put it out into the world. But yeah, so sometimes you have to like the I talked about the going setting up a business in commercial solar, and then with Donald Trump getting elected, and that just put a freeze on large capex expenditure for some of the corporations that I was trying to push over the signing the contract line, and and that kind of got me to pull back from pursuing that industry and got me into this point where I wrote the book. So like if that industry, if Donald Trump didn't get elected and I was making my millions on commercial solar installations, like I might be too busy to ever get around to write a book. And this may well be one of the purposes that I came into this world was to write this book. So I don't doubt
Right.
all the different misdirects or redirects that the universe offers is actually divinely guiding you to where you need to be ultimately.
So when you were moving on from the corporate world and considering getting into becoming an author and getting into um, maybe just simply focusing on your spiritual path that much more. And I'm so also enthusiastic about hearing and seeing what the field will bring for you in the next 12 to 24 months, by the way. So, did you have a sense of like angst about like the future to come, or have you always, or by and large, have you always simply known that, hey, the trail of breadcrumbs will continue to occur and I'll be shown and I'll be guided along the way? Or has there been like this maybe an existential pain due to, okay, now I'm going to change. I'm no longer going to be, full-time property manager with a cushy job.
Hmm.
Can you describe that a little bit?
Sure. Like when I was 17, like I had panic attacks and anxiety neurosis when I was in high school or secondary school in Ireland. Um, so there was definitely times when there was more fear than there was assuredness that it was all going to work out.
Yes.
Um, that the relationship I talked about, the relationship in my mid-20s with a Danish girl that kind of I thought it was my dream partner and stuff, and that relationship didn't work out, and that was a huge like disappointment or a huge like reset and got me questioning everything, and from there is when I gave up the cushy job at the embassy and went to work in Africa and traveled around the world. So that was a huge reset in itself. Um, so yeah, I don't doubt that. Like, kind of, if I hadn't gone to Africa, I mightn't have wrote this book and had all the experiences that I had traveling, and I might still be working a 9 to 5 and job in Dublin and paying a mortgage and being a dad with kids and just living a more typical life. So sometimes these redirects are painful, and so following the guidance isn't always easy. Like sometimes the guidance is telling me to do something that's way outside my comfort zone,
Yes.
and I like, oh my God, I'm not saying that, or I'm not doing that, and then eventually, like maybe a month later, I can say, no wonder I was getting the guidance to do that. And I refused to do it at the time. And then I see how things kind of like went belly up on the path that I took and go and see how it would have worked out pretty sweet if I had done what I was supposed to do. So the like sometimes the guidance is can be challenging having this quite detailed intuition because sometimes
Yes.
if sometimes someone asks me, can I do something next week? And and I might be getting a no. I might want to do it. I might want to be there. I might want to help them or whatever. And yet I'm getting a no. And I don't like to say no necessarily, and especially with something I know I would enjoy doing and helping a friend or whatever. But sometimes I've learned I just have to honor the no and and just not respond straight away saying, yeah, I'll see you there. It's like sometimes, okay, it's give it 24, 48 hours and let it clarify, no, I'm definitely not to do this. And then just politely saying, sorry, I can't be there or whatever. So I've learned the hard way, and sometimes to this day, it's still challenging having that intuition. It's not necessarily an easy ride through life having it, and sometimes it pushes me way outside my comfort zone. So yeah, it's not. Even though I would encourage everyone to try and like get in touch with their intuitive side and to follow that guidance, and the Alchemist is a wonderful book, and I was already on that path when I was reading that book. So it was I could relate to the character following the little signals the universe was sending him, because that was
That's right.
very
The
much
omens.
how I
Yeah.
was living my life even at that point in time. So
Yeah. So let me see here. I had a question about well, I was going to actually comment about, so when you use the example of, let's say somebody says, well, let's do this next week, or can we do this together, or maybe can you help me out? Recently, um, I heard this lady, Melody Beattie, and I felt a calling to do these whenever I can, these daily meditations on codependency. She said in a podcast that I heard her speak that it's a fine line between being human and codependency. Like we want to help, but sometimes people ask us to help more than they really need. Like they may be being quote unquote needy or just overly reliant on their friend, or maybe that relationship just needs a bit of a reset, like you said, that type of a term, or like just a bit of a breather. So I like to also look at like my relationships with my friends and my immediate family and my relatives and my community in terms of, well, is this something that this person is maybe asking me for? Do they really need it? Can they do it themselves? Do I have the time? I'd be happy to help. In fact, I'm the type of person, I literally carry like snacks with me, so that if somebody were to ask me, hey, do you have some change, right? I actually have a principled decision not to give out change, even though I have sometimes. I mean, once in a while I do, but usually I say, well, actually, I'm sorry, I don't. Um, but if you if you'd like, I have, these rice crackers, I have these bananas, or I have this egg salad sandwich, right? Would you like a? I'm going to the grocery store. Would you like me to get you, something? And then they go, oh yeah, can you get me a half a roasted chicken? And I go, no problem. But do you find yourself that in your life and your development, like you're learning partly this sort of a dance between giving and receiving and saying yes and saying no, that's part of this human relations of like healthy giving and healthy sort of standing back type of an aspect, would you say?
Yeah, for sure. Like my biggest challenges in life have definitely been like intimate relationships and spouses and trying to work with the follow my guidance and yet be part of a partnership where sometimes the partner wants to do something and I'm being guided, no, that's not the path, and not wanting to disappoint them. So and having that pull come up about how far you go down one road or the other before something unravels because you're not being true to yourself or you're not being the best partner that you want to be to the person to make them happy and fulfill their wishes and stuff. So there's always that challenge. Well, not always. Sometimes the guidance and the pleasing the partner is on the same path, and sometimes those that can advice or the paths can diverge. And like even breaking up with that Danish girl in when I was in my mid-20s, like
Yeah.
that was a really hard one. Like I thought I'd found my dream partner, my soulmate and partner for the rest of my life, and parent, mother to my children, et cetera, et cetera. And yet when that relationship started to, it was kind of geographical split came between us. She wanted to move back to Denmark. I was kind of built up a good life and nice home and job in Ireland. And and in the end, when she wanted to move back, then I kind of initially gave in, say, okay, I'll move to Denmark, but I couldn't get comfortable in my own skin with that decision. And I was grinding my teeth at nighttime and stuff. And in the end, I had
Wow.
to put my hand up and say, moving to Denmark is not for me. I have to be true to my own guidance and the
That's right.
cell bones and cells in my body are trying to tell me that that move is not the direction I'm to go in, and that ended up causing that it was 3 years into the relationship, but that's what ended up causing the split in the relationship was the geographical division.
Wow.
And like you, everything I buy comes from Costco. So I always have these granola bars in the car in the central console. And if there's a street person at a red light looking for a handout, yeah, I always put my hand in and grab a couple of granola bars and maybe a bottle of water, whatever I have access to in the car. And normally when I put my hand out with the window with that offering, most of the
Yeah.
time it gets welcome accepted. Sometimes they really just want the cash to go buy a whiskey, but they might
Yeah.
tell you off. But most of the time, people they're genuinely down on their luck, and having a bottle of water, and a granola bar is exactly what they need in that moment.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, but the challenges of those deep relationships and the trying to be true to myself and true to the partner, be as best assistance I can to the partner, and sometimes that can be some of my biggest challenges as being an intuitive person that wants to follow my guidance. And if you're in a partner, you're not the sole decision maker in where the money gets spent and where the weekend gets spent or the evening or whatever activity. And so that trying to negotiate um, that can be challenging in a relationship. At the moment, I'm a bit of a monk or a hermit, so it's easier for me just to follow my guidance moment by moment. And if I step back into a relationship, um, I know I'll be kind of potentially having more of those challenges, and unless a partner can fully appreciate that I'm highly intuitive and I I really need to honor that. And sometimes they'll get on board and they've seen my synchronicities or whatever, and they know that there's something going on here. But there's sometimes they have their heart set on something and doing something or whatever, and having me follow my guidance that doesn't give them the opportunity to do what they want to do next weekend can be something that's not necessarily welcomed, and they might think I'm using that as an excuse not to do it. But
Mm-hmm.
so it's certainly not a golden ticket to an easy life. Like it brings up its own set of challenges, but at the end of the day, when you see those million to one synchronicities just come together in such perfection, um, and yeah, when I say that million to one by million to one by million to one, and at that stage you're up to a Google to one, and yeah, you just have to the mathematician in me has to go, wow, what's the odds? It's and just
That's
step
right.
back in awe and appreciation for how this apparent universe is really not what it appears, and that there's something weirder going on in the background behind the what's that Jim Carrey movie with
The Truman Show.
the Truman Show. That there's something not unlike the Truman Show really going on in the background with the spirit world and stuff, and that we're in the illusion of this world, like the Hindus call it Maya, and the that yeah that it's the Truman Show might actually be closer to ultimate reality than we actually are aware. So.
Right. Absolutely. So, would you say that deciding and getting this guidance to take the spiritual path to become, call you a spiritual entrepreneur and author about spirituality, is that an epiphany you experienced? And it was an unfolding, I know, over the years that kept on beckoning you, but would you say that's one of the key epiphanies that you experienced in recent time in your life, like in the last, let's say, 2, 3 years? Or is it something else that is kind of like a key moment of an aha moment? What would that be? And and basically, like, how did you actually sort of unearth that?
Well, it's still a work in progress. Like the book has probably only sold 100 copies, so I'm trying to put it out into the world as best as like my marketing capability has, and put it into the hands of like when I 2 weeks ago I mentioned I did a workshop with Neil Donald Walsh,
Yeah,
and I had the opportunity over Zoom to thank him for all his influence on me, and
yeah,
that I said there's like stories that he's going to relate to in this book, and there's a scene looking up at the stars that I actually took from him, and a story that he told me on a previous Zoom retreat like a couple of years back. And
yeah,
he said, "Oh my God, what's the name of that book?" And he was taking down the name, and he was ordering it that night, and he's probably in the middle of reading it right now.
yeah,
And maybe someone like him with I don't know 10 million followers on social media and stuff, and if he was to say, "OMG, you've got to read this book. This is amazing," and all of a sudden I wake up someday and I'll go from selling 100 copies to selling 10,000 copies or a million copies or whatever. But at the moment, I mean, I might find myself trying to hobbling back to a 9 to 5, going, okay, I tried that, didn't really work out. I thought I could maybe make a go of it and become a professional author. So I'm working on book two right now, and I don't
yeah,
doubt even if I did go back to a day job that book two would eventually come about in evenings and weekends, and eventually I would get it out there. But at the
yeah,
moment, it's I'm full-time dedicated to promoting this book and trying to launch it into the world, and and also move book two along in the process. So I find the reading quite profound. Like there's times I'm reading it and I'm tearing up myself, and I'm the author. I mean, I know how the next paragraph goes and how the next chapter goes, and I still find myself being moved to tears by it. So I genuinely think the book is, and I've got some really good reviews, like fully independent reviews on Amazon that are
yeah.
5 star, and people are calling it a transmission or so profound, and It is
Yeah.
finding its audience and getting that level of recognition that I'm seeing the depth to the book, and other people are beginning to reflect that back to me now too. So I suspect the book will be a success and enable me to go for like I'm aspiring to do a trilogy with it, like the book two and book three, and then if I'm even planning a prequel trilogy potentially from like age zero up to the beginning of book one.
Yeah.
So it could
Wow,
end
that'll
up
be
being a
great.
six-part, two trilogies with the prequel going back in time. Not unlike Star Wars, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But we shall see if I'm following the breadcrumbs, and if that's how it unfolds, and in 6 months' time I'm looking back at this podcast going, oh my God, I at the time it had only sold 100 copies, and I was wondering if it would really take off, and here I am, and it's in chapters and Barnes and Noble or whatever, and I'm laughing all the way to the bank on the back of it, going like, wow, like it did unfold in that direction, but I'm also aware that the future is not written in stone, and that the yeah. So at this stage, I've learned to try and take it day by day,
Day
and
by
I can
day.
obviously hope for like best possible dream-like expectations for how it might go in a if I had a magic wand, and thinking, okay, it could genuinely take off, or I could find myself, okay, I need a day job
I
and just
can
go
I
forward that
can
way.
say truthfully, I can say that having read one chapter fully and then having gotten the like I have that audio. I'll send you the audio of the first chapter. I know there's 20 or 21 chapters, right? So it's a sizable book. It's what is it, like 200 to 300 pages, is it?
449 pages
Yeah,
actually.
449 pages. So it's a sizable book, like I was saying. Um, but the distinct there, well, yeah, it doesn't look as thick as it is. 449. It could be thicker, but so I'm getting the sense that just like Wayne Dyer talks about leading an inspired life, and we mentioned that we both had seen the documentary The Shift by Dr. Wayne Dyer, and you mentioned that you read pretty much all of his books. So we talk about in his work that the afternoon of life is completely different than the morning of our life. And so I do find that this book, Temple of Miriam, is inducing that shift. It's like, uh, it's like drink this tea and by tomorrow morning you're gonna feel better, or take this cookie and you're gonna feel as right as rain. And so if you read this book, Temple of Miriam, you're going to experience the continuation of your shift into the afternoon of your life, where you are simply being lived by it, by this source that we're all being lived by, whether we resist it or we let it, flow us along, so to speak. And so that's kind of the experience that I have. And the other aspect of it is that we all have that I want to share. That's my experience about your book, Adrian, is that we all have an experience of that we can have as we walk down the street, that we simply see the tree or we see the shimmer in the leaves and the sort of the sway in how the wind caresses those branches and those leaves. And we have that option that's available to us. Recently, in the last maybe 2, 3 months, looking at how much I had to do at a particular job that I was at, and like in my life, I am, I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a family man, and I said to my coworker, and happens to be the boss and the owner at that time, I said to him, you know what? I decided when I have so much to do and life is so intense, I'm simply going to stretch that moment. In the moment, I'm simply going to be relaxed. I'm going to have a lot of time in the moment. So that's kind of what the book reminds me of. And I think every spiritual seeker will be able to relate. And also, I want to say that, it's my intention, and I can probably guess, you can, let the audience know how much you can relate as well, Adrian, that we're hoping to induce that shift, and we're beckoning to more people who have had these flashes of serendipity in their life and maybe have not listened to them. Like I mentioned to you before we started recording, is that from the beginning, I knew I was not meant to be an engineer. I spent 14 years working in oil and gas as an engineer in Alberta, only to be so relieved after I have moved on. And then, then I was a driving instructor, which was very fulfilling for me. And then I studied about the same time concurrently. I studied acupuncture, which was very fulfilling for me, and I got into holistic health in a big way. And then last 5 years, I've been doing sales, virtually 100% full time, professionally. Now I'm learning how to become, an influencer, persuasion and influence, public speaking, podcasting. So I want to hear your sort of feedback on what I said. And also I want to invite you, as you've probably considered, to do your own public speaking tour and book promotion tour and continue to get the word out.
Yeah, I admire where you are jumping into the influencer and setting up the podcast and following that passion and you're very much a people person and you can meet a stranger and be deep in conversation 5 minutes later and that's indeed how we met.
Yeah.
Um, the book promotion, like maybe a book tour, but I suspect that would probably require a one of those literary agents to respond to positively to my email. I'm starting to get those rejection emails and stuff that every author kind of recounts. Uh, Excuse me. And but yeah, if next week I get a positive response to one of the emails I've sent out and I have a publisher behind me and they want to translate the book and they want to put it out into different markets and they want to send me on a book promotion tour and they set up interviews or whatever. And I go, okay, I get to travel again, which I'm obviously quite a passionate traveler. I think we're both a similar age in life, but people might come to the book if someone reads the book at age 21 that they might like see it at a very different perspective than you and I can come to the book at, and someone might read it in their 60s or 70s and see another angle on it too. So
Yeah.
it's everybody's gonna um, read a different book from their perspective of the one that's in front of them. The one that I see in front of me could be a very different book that they see in front of them. Um,
Have you thought of typing into Claude if I wanted to set up my own speaking tour, and may not be just the promotion of the book, it may be simply also to share your experience, as we call in the recovery movement, because I've been in recovery for a few years now, and I'm sort of most humbly proud about it. It's one of the best things that's ever happened to me in life is to live life just that much more pure and original. Um, so basically, where I was going with that is, if you type in, if I were to organize my own speaking tour, who would I contact that I may be able to set up my own speaking gigs without having the aid of a literary agent? Because I mean that's pretty much what you did, is you self-published through Amazon. So now how do we take that to a speaking tour? Whether it be, just Alberta to start and then further.
Well, I have been sending out like complimentary copies of the book. Like this week, I sent one to Miryam from the Breakdown broadcast in
Yeah,
California.
yeah,
I sent a book to Next Level Soul. They're based out, I think, Austin in Texas.
yeah,
Um, and just even various authors that have inspired me over the years and people that I think like spiritually inclined on social media and stuff that I think, oh, I think if they were to read this book, they would connect with it too. And
yeah.
if they were to connect with it and they put it out to their followers saying, "Oh my God, like this is probably one of the best books I've ever read," and all of a sudden, like that one of those balls that's on a cliff edge starts to just roll down and just and gathers more snow or whatever on it. So like I've probably put about 20 or 30 books out to mostly into the United States because that's where most
Yes.
of these authors or influencers and large podcasters are based. Um, and yeah, so any one day I'll open my email box and potentially I'm getting an invitation to come down to California, whatever, to do an interview. And and with some of them, like they could have like Next Level Soul could have 10 million views on a YouTube that they just put out like 3 weeks ago. And it's like, oh my God, it's phenomenal just how much interest exists, like that wasn't there 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And even I remember seeing Eckhart Tolle come to Calgary maybe 6 or 7 years ago. And he was at the
Yes.
BMO Center in Calgary, and there was like 7,000 people there and just sitting down in a convention center just to hear him speak.
Well,
And
that's what I was thinking, is basically developing your own speeches based on your own material, based on some of the books, and then simply starting that at a small scale. Like what I had in mind was simply finding a way, how do I get myself in front of at least 20 people or more? How can I find those audiences that are willing to hear me out? You know what I mean? And then just simply saying, "Hey, I'll come and speak for you."
yeah, if that's how things open up, and I
Yeah,
say
potentially, right?
yeah, potentially,
Potentially.
like just say in 3 weeks' time, one of those emails is like, yeah, they wanted me to come speak, they want me to talk about the book,
Yeah.
and it just takes off from there. Like, and today I say the universe, like my intuition for the previous couple of months, every Sunday morning I was getting like told to get up and go to this Unitarian church in Calgary.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, and I'd go and I was wondering, like, I'd come out going, oh, I wonder why I was supposed to go. I might have talked to one or two interesting people at the end, like over coffee and stuff, but not quite sure about why I was getting this clear hit to go. Sometimes it's not obvious
Yeah.
in the moment or in the first day or two. But then, like a couple of weeks ago, that's when the Reverend asked me if I would be a service reader, like today, which I did today. And I got to speak about the history that I mentioned of Easter, of Ishtar being like from 4000 BC. And that was the first full moon after the spring equinox, which is and she was the goddess of love and fertility. And say the symbols for that are the bunny rabbits and the eggs, and that's how Easter is the first Sunday after the first full moon after the spring equinox, that it's a festival that goes back 6,000 years. And I say Ishtar appears in the book. So I get to all that world that I love delving into this like philosophies and theologies and the different belief systems from the different parts of the world and kind of seeing the common truths. And that's, I say, it's a major theme right throughout the entire book is that philosophical comparison and seeing
Yeah.
what the common threads are and seeing what some threads might be incomplete or slightly different perspective. Um,
When you say treads, like, can you explain the word treads and what sort of phenomenon you're talking about there? I can kind of gather what you mean, but I'd like to hear more if you don't mind.
like to say in Buddhism, they call it the middle path, to say of like not in the extremes or whatever.
Yeah.
And the in another philosophy, yeah,
The
it might
golden
have a
mean.
slightly different terminology, but the
Yeah.
same idea of like not being on the extremes. Like in Egyptian mystery school mysticism, it's called Mat, MA-AT, and it's about balance and the weighing scales of Mat with the feather and the heart and seeing if which is heavier, which way the soul gets to go in the hereafter. So all these philosophies all have like their own different philosophies about the hereafter, and a lot of them have common threads that are very much like the same information, and some of them might go off slightly different angles or perspectives, but the common threads, let's say the golden rule, like do unto others as you would have done unto yourself. Like you can look at, let's say, a dozen different philosophies and theologies, and you'll find a slightly different version of the golden rule, like right throughout every single belief system that's been on the planet for 5,000 years. There's a version of that. So that's, let's say that's a common thread through all philosophical religions and belief systems and theological perspectives.
Yes.
So that's what I
Yes.
mean by the common thread.
Okay. Um, yeah. So basically, I'm a little bit more of like a guerrilla marketing type of approach, like just do whatever is necessary, and you're a little bit more like just follow the sort of the more conventional path. But let's see here. Definitely, I would like to invite you not as a as advice, but just as a suggestion to consider putting out content of your own as well. And you know, I know you are putting out content. Obviously, everybody's putting out content. Have you ever heard of Gary V and what he has to say about like organic social media nowadays? Organic interest,
No.
more he calls it organic creative. Organic creative, basically. So if you look at yourself as a business, an author that puts out value to the marketplace for people to be inspired by, for people to enjoy, for people to be trans, transported to another realm of existing, it's a different frequency. When you read the book, you're not on the same frequency as when you're riding the sea train, right? It's completely different. You're transported into an enchanted realm. And so basically, help me out, I lost my train of thought.
Well, I'm
So
not
yeah,
familiar with it.
Gary V, right, Gary V. So you're an
Uh,
author, you're a content creator, and so Gary V says that every company out there should be spending at least 20% of their budget creating this organic creative. So where you talk about like you could just be out for a walk, you could be talking about, what you noticed that day, right? Just like a lot of people are. And then it gets more and more professional over time. There's a business out there called Viral Coach, viralcoach.com. They keep on popping up on my feed as an ad. Seems like a very nice gentleman, younger gentleman. He's the seems like the head man, the front man, the owner, and he basically they guarantee like I think 5 million views or 1 million view, and then most people end up getting at least 15 million, but they guarantee like either 1 or 5 million views. So they help you get your organic creative out in a way that's so appealing as nowadays, things are going viral, but that there is formulas to becoming viral, right? So that's something for you to consider. Viral coach.
yeah. And my brother-in-law was encouraged me the exact same advice over the Christmas too, that I should have my own social media. I'm obviously on social media, but he was encouraging me to be more proactive in terms of putting myself more out there. Um, Yeah, I'm like even what I did today, being the speaker at the Unitarians, like that was even way outside my comfort zone, and I think I did
Yeah.
really well in terms of how it turned out. But it's not it's not something that I'm overly comfortable
Yep.
doing. Like I'm happy to be the for you to interview me and stuff, but I'm much less likely to put myself out there and try and establish my own podcast and try and get listeners and try and get people to interview and and be marketing that. So I'm much more passive. Maybe the universe is kind of like you're not the first person to encourage me to do this, and maybe that's ultimately where the direction I'm moving in. Like
Okay.
here I am the same day doing this, and after doing that talk earlier, so it's already kind of manifesting in front of me.
Right.
Yeah, it's I'm getting more comfortable, but like even a month ago, I might have said, "Oh no, I'm not. I don't want to be interviewed on a podcast," and yet here I am. And maybe in the coming months, I'm going to find these kind of invitations are popping up more and more, and that I need to learn to embrace everyone, because that in itself, it brings the book to the awareness of another 1,000 or 10,000 people or 100,000 people or even 1 million people. And that's
Yes.
the path that I'm kind of being routed down. Um, yeah, and yeah, it's like being out, life begins at the edge of your comfort zone. Someone said that, and it's definitely very true. If we're constantly inside our comfort zone, and if I won the lotto last weekend or last year, and I was just living a life of luxury and eating and drinking and traveling, like I could stay inside a bubble of my own comfort zone, but never really have a fulfilling life, because I won't be growing as a person necessarily. So the whole idea of being challenged to put myself out there and grow as a person, and that's the goal of being human, and I think why we came here in the first place. So it'd be nice to get the balance of the lotto millions in the bank balance and growing at the same time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you're ready for it, I'm also getting like little ideas like where you could speak. That would be really sort of a neat place to speak. There is a couple of things that come up. Specifically, the first one came up was the light cellar. Are you familiar with the light cellar?
Yeah, they sell the organic food and stuff there.
Yeah, they're in
Yeah.
Bonus. And they don't really do this kind of thing like where a speaker comes and speaks, but they do participate. For example, they participate in the fermentation festival. And I bet you if if you, I mean, they have also delicious, they call them elixirs. Have you ever had an elixir at the light cellar?
Yeah,
Uh,
and the next Ukrainian girl I used to date was she would spend $500 there at a time buying raw cocoa beans
yeah,
and elixirs and smoothie
though,
materials for additions to smoothies. So
yeah,
yeah, I've had a few of their elixirs over the years
that's
for
right.
sure.
So that comes to mind. I don't know if, like, I bet you, I mean, if you wanted to ask them to organize something like that, I bet you at some point they'll be open to it because, they also want to promote themselves further and help local artists and local authors promote them. Just, yeah, I see you as having a speaking tour. Personally, I do. And the other thing that I wanted to mention is so Egypt is connected with the pyramids, right? Do you talk about the pyramids in the book? I
Yeah,
forgive my
there's a couple of
ignorance.
scenes
Yeah,
where there's one scene where the Yeshua is heading out for 21 days in the desert as a retreat, as an
yeah,
initiation from the school.
yeah.
And originally the pyramids had gold caps on them and then polished
Okay,
limestone up to the gold cap.
okay.
And like historically, the gold was probably removed like a thousand years before, 1,000 BC potentially. Like, but it conceivably it was up around the time of the year zero. And so in the book, I have he's walking he's walking east into the desert, and I have the sun is rising on the east, and then it's reflecting off the gold cap of the pyramid, and it's lighting up exactly where he is, and he can see his own silhouette cast into the desert. And
Wow.
so I play on some imagery about the pyramids.
Yeah.
Um, in book two, I'm thinking about having like a conversation where Yeshua and Miryam are discussing like the origins of the Sphinx or the purpose of the pyramids and stuff. And there's all sorts of theories, crazy theories out there that I could potentially have one of these more unusual origin stories for it. Like some say that the Sphinx predates the pyramids by thousands of years before that again, that it has watermarks. Um, sorry, just let me get some water.
Yes.
So yeah, so I'm tying with ideas how I might incorporate the some of those structures other than just being geographically located there, but actually going into some of the theories around their origin and purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I haven't. It's not other than those that scene I've mentioned there now in book two or book one. I'm tying with the idea of of having a discussion around the origin of the pyramids or purpose of the pyramids and the Sphinx in book two or three. So
Yeah. 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 Okay. So where I was going with that was to just highlight to you that where I'm originally from, former Yugoslavia, which now the part that I'm from is called Croatia, and the country is now multiple different individual countries. So the neighboring country now, Bosnia Herzegovina, it actually has the largest world pyramid. I'm not sure if you're aware. It's Bosnian pyramids. And
oh
they're the largest, the larger of the two or the three that are there is 2.5 times taller than the big pyramid in Giza.
wow, that's
Yes.
news to me. So
Yeah. Yeah. So there is a gentleman who is popularizing it. His name is Dr. Sam Osmanagic. And recently, actually in March, he was doing a bit of a speaking tour in the UK. So I have a mentor of mine who was part of organizing that. So I just like I actually well I'm very much into like holistic health and like using energy to heal and prayer and intention. And so I see myself as definitely visiting those Bosnian pyramids one day as well. And it's a place where there's I think last I checked was about a 500,000 people visit every year. So it's a bit of a tourist destination. It's a great place to visit. You feel the power of the pyramids. Like they have tunnels that they dug out, so you feel the power of the pyramids. They have this special water sources that come out either beside the pyramids or in the pyramids. The water has healing power. So I would just I'm kind of playing with the idea of like the healing power of the pyramids, the healing power of faith, right? The healing power of love. So,
cool. Yeah, even I saw recently how China has pyramids that are not really known in the Western world.
yeah,
Obviously, you have Mexico has Chichen Itza and stuff.
yeah,
Yeah, so apparently it's there's a networks of them all around the world. I even see someone's even trying to imply that a mountain in that's becoming the cap is being as the ice melts in Antarctica. It looks like a perfect pyramid is being exposed. I suspect
see,
it's just a mountain like um, the Toblerone mountain that it's just naturally forming in that perfect. But you never know. There's more to heaven and earth than are in our dreamt of in our philosophy. So
that's right.
yeah,
That's right. So now, just as if you don't mind, what do you think if we were to start to kind of wrap it up?
sure.
I would love for you to summarize the transformations you have experienced most recently in your life and over the years. Like, how would you describe those transformations?
Well, the I would say even today was transformational in terms of me being the speaker up on a platform and it was broadcast live on YouTube and I was as comfortable as I was. And that to me was like a huge, like I often years ago, if I was in a business meeting and I would let something slide rather than speak up and my throat chakra, if I was to put it in energetic terms would be have all sorts of blockages from childhood and stuff. But now doing what I did today was like, and here I am this evening, like talking for a couple of hours with you.
Yeah,
And so I would say I'm definitely clearing that energetic blockage that's in my throat. And a few months ago, I did a Reiki Holy Fire Reiki course, and every night before I go to bed, I do some Reiki on myself as part of before I move on to Reiki 2 and Reiki 3 and Reiki Master Reiki and all this kind of stuff. And I have to send energy to my throat chakra by putting left hand on my heart and right hand on my throat. And I wonder, oh, maybe I'm energetically actually am moving, clearing some blockages that are there that are
Yeah.
enabling the transformations of how well today has gone for me communicating from a platform, whether it's online or whether it was like literally a physical platform with a podium in front of me. And yeah, there are things that don't come to me easily and certainly wouldn't have come to me easily in the past. But today I knocked it out of the park at that Unitarian church earlier. And I was super impressed with how readily I did it. I'm not saying my voice wasn't nervous at times, but it was certainly didn't stop me from broadcasting and doing pausing, like not speaking 100 words per minute as I could have done. And I did Toastmasters maybe 10, 15 years ago, and I would always be getting told to slow down.
Yes.
And so yeah, so I think that today even marks a transformation for me all on its own. So
Brilliant. So I would like to just kind of summarize that with you coming to visit on Purpose to Care here, Adrian, Mr. Adrian Bollard, the author of Temple of Miryam, A Love the World Has Forgotten. Can you tell me the subtitle again?
yeah, I love the world forgot.
I Love the World Forgot. It's available on Amazon. It's available on Kindle, so paperback or Kindle, as well as Audible. He's available for a podcast and a potential in-person speaking engagement, right?
Bring it on.
And so what's the best way to contact you directly?
My email address is pretty clear. It's just first name dot last name at gmail.com. So anyone could reach out to me that way for sure.
Adrian.bollard@gmail.com. Bollard is
Exactly.
spelled with a double L.
Yeah, Bollard.
Okay, and so basically today, Adrian shared with us a story of having, seemingly outside a pretty ordinary life of having spent 10 years working for the Canadian Embassy in Dublin, right?
Yep.
In Dublin, 10 years in Canadian Embassy, then having finished his MBA, then having almost like a backpacking tour of South America, having a trip around the world, taking a year and a bit to volunteer in Africa with NGOs, then eventually making an immigration move first as a young adult working on a work visa and following your family members, your sisters who were already living in Canada, and then you settled in Canada, and then you became, you started your professional career in Canada, and most recently, that's how we met about 4 years ago. We met as part of the solar industry, and you shared your net zero home design and the solar and the heat pumps and how you actually were able to disconnect your natural gas usage to the home by using a heat pump that can heat down to -30, if I'm not mistaken. And then below that, if it's even colder, then you can use electrical heaters, right? So we got acquainted through my door-to-door sales experience, and you were so kind and generous to share your experience about that. Then in the last 2 years, you've delved out of I like to call it sometimes the TikTok, the 9 to 5, and you're simply trailblazing your own destiny. Recently, I found my 2025. It's a hard copy agenda, and I wrote at the very front. I said, "How do I know the future? Because I designed it." Right. So you're now that much more at an accelerated pace, designing your own future and living on purpose. So I want to affirm you for that. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Purpose to Care here. And how would you like to, what are your parting words here for us, Adrian?
Well, I have a quote that comes to mind that matches what you just said, and it's the best way to predict the future is to create it. So that's a nice way to dovetail just how you tidied up there too. So.
Yes. And are we gonna do even a one-page reading? Do you think? Do we still have time? Are you okay, or do you want to just leave that in suspense?
If anyone Googles the book title, that they can get the sample pages and stuff on Amazon, and even
Perfect.
Audible will even read
Perfect.
the first, I don't know, 5 minutes, and it's a nice introduction, and it'll do better. My throat is getting kind of dry, so I
Yes,
suspect I might struggle to get through a solid reading right now.
I
But
love it.
yeah, there's lots of it available as samples online. And yeah, if someone wants to take it from there, and if they do like it, I'm at this stage, I'm just loving getting reviews because that's a big part. Until you get 10 plus reviews on Amazon, the internal algorithms don't necessarily promote it that easily, even
Okay.
though I do paid promotions behind it for keyword searches and stuff.
Yes.
But yeah,
Okay.
I can only, if someone really enjoys the book, I would just ask them, please, from the bottom of my heart, to give it a rating, and or a very least a rating and potentially a review if you're up to writing a review, and that just helps other people to find it at the end of the day too. So
Perfect. We're looking for the 5-star reviews.
bring
If
it
it's any
on.
less than 5 stars, then you can send
I'll,
him
I'll
an
be
email,
happy with a
please.
4.
4 will be fine. Thank you so much, Adrian, and I look forward to speaking to you soon and seeing you in Calgary at the end of the month.
Sounds good. Take
Bye for
care.
now. Good
Bye.
night.
Take care. Bye.